Great to be here at the info point. I come here quite regularly, but I like the new setup. My last intervention was more at the other corner. I think it's very well how this has opened up. If anyone feels like you profit from the opened up space, I would feel more comfortable if at least these front rows would be filled by those who are backbenching. So if anyone would like to come and be a bit more interactive, that's fine. We are also, by the way, waiting still for Dr. Günther, Stefan and Sugan to come in. If they have just arrived, all the better. Voila. What in English you say, you can never have an entry if you're always on time. So a big applause for Mr. Sugan and Dr. Günther. I'll come to both of you in a moment. For the setup, I would also like to explain that the film in the background is actually our internal crew putting best lessons learned on what we call capacity for development platform. It's sort of an internal platform which we start also to open up to member states. So anyway, thanks for the initiative to try to capture what indeed I think is a very good case on how to, as you have done this morning, try to learn lessons from what has been a very worthwhile activity. You will also benefit in a moment to hear both from Dr. Günther, who is sort of the European team leader of the mobile laboratory squadron, and our formidable Nigerian counterpart, Dr. Asogu. I also understand we have about 10 to 12 other members of the team here in the room, and maybe I could start by asking them, with or without microphone, just to identify themselves to the rest of the audience. So with whom can I start to recognize who else has been so formidably active in the field? I think stand up. Voila. Overall, I think the prisma here is to recognize notably the very important role that Nigeria has played and carried out in the fight against the Ebola virus, and for example by mobilizing sort of 6 experts also themselves, and have been operating the mobile laboratories in Sierra Leone and putting their own health at risk, and I think they should also be registered among the other sort of many heroes also we have recognized to have fought alongside the international community in the fight of Ebola, when in March we had a major Brussels review event, for which the way the European Commission could be seen proactive in having set up these mobile laboratories remains really fundamental, not in aggregate funding terms, but in the way we operate. And again, you'll hear a bit more later on during this InfoPoint conference. And it's, I think, to the credit also of Eddie Meyer, who is sitting here in front of me, sort of the head of sector and the unit in charge, who together with people like Simonetta Riva and Julian Galabru, whom I see more in the background, way back in 2012 have already put the finger on the collective risk of pandemics and proposed that the European Commission would fund such laboratories under the instrument they managed, the instrument, long-term instrument for stability. So yes, if I want to say something to capacity for development, it's always good that we have colleagues who are proactive, recognize ex ante a challenge, a potential, in this case a risk, and come forward with programs before the necessity for them does hit the headline. And this project, as I said, indeed started already in 2012 with the main objective at the time of establishing a collaborative network among European and African institutions in the fight against highly dangerous pathogens. That was the more generic term used at the time. And these labs network have then acquired sort of 3 mobile laboratory units to be deployed in case of disease outbreak, and also having received European and African specialists already training. And those laboratories, thanks to the initiative taken in 2012, were indeed ready when in summer last year the crisis hit. The development response, hence, to the Ebola outbreak in the West Africa, and again, you will tell us more in detail how this actually worked as far as the laboratory is concerned. But it was a critical, very first element for us to gain credibility as European Union actors in framing a much larger response, which federated a wider range of European Union funding, but also federated a very wide range of European member state experts, and grew rapidly from the sort of laboratory aspects on the ground, also to do various health initiatives back here in Europe, and come in with a wider array of instruments. The headline figures we used are still staggering. I think as a collective European effort, 1.4 billion euros in financial support from the European Commission and member states, of which from the European Commission alone more than 400 million. And these 400 million, again, quite interestingly, again for colleagues maybe watching this, are half made up of development funding, sort of directly under the supervision of the General Directorate hosting you here today, but then added up by a strong element of research. In fact, close to 140 million euros mobilized from DG Research to accelerate vaccine testing, and then a very good collaboration with about 70 million euros coming from the humanitarian side. This altogether, good 400 million, and the rest then made up by contributions from member states, again with what I always consider is a healthy balance, like a good third comes from European Union institutions, and in particular from us, but still that the 28 member states together can cough up sort of about 2/3 of the effort. But an effort well framed by us, I think, here in Brussels, and an Ebola coordinator holding the lead for the European Union response. On the 3 mobile laboratories, again, I would rather leave it, I think, to you to explain the details of the trucks and how this all worked. I think it's an interesting aspect, and how that interacted with the African expertise. I would maybe then sort of be interested to hear from you how this also linked to what also was a good concomitant element, namely to help via the African Union help other African states mobilize health experts to come from different parts, different corners of Africa, also to their help. We were directly involved in funding, I think, 90 medical professionals and support staff. Again, this is not just the monetary aspect, the logistics and the project value of having done so, but at a very critical moment, it helped us also to portray the broader issue of solidarity, which was the solidarity of Europe with the African countries concerned, but also to make sure that part and parcel of that story would have been the African solidarity. First and foremost, quite credibly shown by a neighboring country like Nigeria, but also more largely also from other African countries. Now, where do we stand now? There I take you back a few weeks to a larger conference we hosted here under the theme of from crisis to recovery, where one of the big strands was indeed that we have to continue keeping our aim to get this quickly back to zero. The whole epidemic has with all these efforts actually dovetailed down to what in September was considered close to a best case, but nonetheless there's still a sticky sort of 10% 10% infection rate against the highest infection rate, which we have to weed out in order to call this battle won. And then once we have that firmly established, of course, there is the larger issue of what it takes to take the three countries concerned to recovery. And for that, there is also an EU-led mechanism which we combine with the UN and the World Bank colleagues, putting in place a larger, what we call here, Ebola recovery assessment, leading to a broader regional Ebola recovery framework, but in which then the national governments put their national recovery plans into place. And this is where the credibility of the recovery is essential. And as we have put forward also in Brussels, is that if it's not with the leadership of the national governments, of the regional authorities, all this will not hold. But we are confident, and we were actually very impressed how the crisis has bonded the three leaders concerned together. Of course, for us as development actors, there is a range of aspects on how we can take this up, and this is from factoring in the revised plans into the way we sequence and formulate budget support to individual countries. It is a question on how to have a fresh look at some of our health programs, but the same goes for education, agriculture, and for the entire productive sector of these countries. Lessons learned. Again, I would thank Adrian, his unit, and the InfoPoint to be able that we can wrap up what has been, I think, a very open-ended exercise. Well, I think I should not say what the lessons learned are from this info discussion, but what Adrian was discussing with colleagues already this morning is that this is a good example, sort of needed, on how to improve coordination across the instruments. I think we can take inspiration from the way the Instrument for Stability operates in order to further flexibilize our procedures so as to accelerate also our response capacity. And more generally, as I say, it's one of the better stories I would think over the last many months on the very impressive combined European Union response capacity, and it's also been heartening the way we could play this out with the African partners, and of course I'm as DG Development looking forward that we stay involved not only with this initiative, which at least will take us into 2016, but make sure that the various lessons learned factor back into the way we can support recovery of the countries hit, of the population hit. With that, I think I should stop and maybe pass the microphone and the podium here to the European Mobile Laboratory team leader, Dr. Günther, and this will be then followed up by you, Dr. Sohu, on the Nigerian side. Thank you very much.